Good morning, everyone. Good morning, attorney. My topic is about the Section 5 and 6 of the Revised Corporation Code of the Philippines. So, Section 5 states that corporators and incorporators, stockholders, and members. Corporators are those who compose a corporation, whether as stockholders or shareholders in a stock corporation or as members in a non-stock corporation. Incorporators are those stockholders or members mentioned in the Articles of Incorporation as originally forming and composing the corporation and who are signatories thereof. Sinasabi lang sa Section 5 ay yung mga components ng isang corporation. May 4 na states, ito yung corporators, incorporators, stockholders, and members. Pero aside from these 4, may iba pang components ang isang corporation. So let's go to the next slide to further discuss the components of a corporation. There are 9 components of a corporation: the corporators, incorporators, stockholders or shareholders, members, board of directors or board of trustees, corporate officers, subscribers, underwriter, and promoter. So first is the corporators. Corporators are those who compose a corporation whether as stockholders or as members. In short, ang corporators ang bumubuo sa isang corporation. Whether you are shareholders or an incorporator, basta member ka ng corporation is tinatawag ang corporators. May or not be a signatory of Articles of Incorporation. So, pwedeng maging corporator yung mga taong di originally or di signatory sa incorporation or sa Articles of Incorporation. Tinutukoy nito yung nagiging shareholder or member after ng incorporation ng isang corporation. So, walang limit kung ilan yung corporator sa isang corporation. So, a corporator ceases to be a corporator by sale of his share in case of the stock corporation. So, pag naibenta na yung share ng isang corporators is hindi na siya pwedeng tawaging corporators ng isang corporation. So, in case of non-stock corporation naman, when the corporator ceases to be a member. So, pag hindi na member ng isang non-stock corporation, is hindi na din siya corporators. So, next is incorporators. So, yung incorporators, it is the stockholders or members mentioned in the Articles of Incorporation as originally forming and composing the corporation and who are signatories thereof. So, yung incorporators, sila yung bumuo sa corporation. Sila yung corporator na makikita at nakasign sa Articles of Incorporation. So, yung incorporators, kailangan lang ng maximum na 15 person or 15 incorporators sa isang corporation. A incorporator of a stock corporation must own or be a subscriber to at least 1 share of capital stock. Hindi ka pwedeng maging incorporators upon incorporation kung hindi ka owner ng at least 1 share ng isang corporation. Kung sa old corporation, ang pwedeng maging incorporators ay natural persons, sa revised corporation code naman, ang incorporators may be composed of natural person and artificial person. Natural person, ito yung human beings o yung naturally born person. Yung artificial person naman, they are created by law and they are given a legal rights and duties of a human being. Example nito is yung partnership and corporation. So, it do not cease to be an incorporator upon sale of his share. Ibig sabihin, incorporator pa din sila kahit na naibenta na nila ang kanilang shares. Kasi nga, sila yung nasa Articles of Incorporation at yung Article of Incorporation ay hindi pwedeng mabago. Ang mangyayari lang, pag naibenta na ang kanilang shares, ay hindi na sila corporator ng isang corporation. Pero mananatili pa din siya or sila na incorporator. Kasi nga, all incorporators are corporators but not all corporators are incorporators. So next is stockholders or shareholders, the owner of the shares of stock in a stock corporation. So, yung mga stockholders, sila yung mga nag-o-own ng shares of stock sa isang corporation. So, sila din yung tinatawag din silang corporators ng isang corporation. So, next is members. So, yung members, they are the corporators of a non-stock corporation. So, members ang tawag sa corporators ng isang non-stock corporation. Yung membership nila nakadepende sa terms na naka-indicate sa Articles of Incorporation. Kasi nga corporator sila ng isang non-stock corporation, hindi sila owner ng shares of stock. So, next is Board of Directors or Board of Trustees. So, yung Board of Directors, sila yung governing body in a stock corporation. Yung Board of Trustees naman is governing body in a non-stock corporation. So, pareho lang sila ng power. They exercise the corporate powers. They are also responsible for the governance and management ng corporations. And also, kailangan nilang maging owner of at least one share yung Board of Directors. So, for Board of Directors naman, they have 1-year term. So, may 1 year silang magiging Board of Directors and after 1 year is need na silang palitan or kailangan na magboto ng panibago. Yung Board of Trustees naman may 3-year term which is mapapalitan sila after 3 years pero may exceptions, yung tinatawag na principle of holdover. Means, mananatili sila sa posisyon nila hanggat wala pang na-elect na bago. So next is the corporate officers. The president who shall be a director, a treasurer who may or may not be a director, a secretary who shall be a resident and citizen of the Philippines, and such other officers as may provided for in the bylaws. So, yung corporate officers, they are the officers who are identified in the corporation code, the articles of incorporations or bylaws. So, pag hindi naka-indicate sa articles of incorporation yung mga corporate officers, yung mag-e-elect sa kanila is yung board of directors. So, next is subscribers. So, yung subscribers, they are the person who have agreed to take and pay for original unissued shares of a corporation formed or to be formed. So, yung subscribers, they are shareholders at the time of the incorporations. Next is underwriters. So, underwriters, they are the person who guarantees on a firm commitment and or declared best effort basis the distribution and sale of securities of any kind by another company. So, a person or entity, especially an investment banker who guarantees sales of newly issued securities by purchasing all or part of the share of resale to the public. So, in short, yung mga underwriter, sila yung namamahala sa sale ng securities of corporation rather. So, next is promoter. So, yung promoter, they are the founder or organizer of a corporation or business venture, one who takes the entrepreneurial initiative in funding or organizing a business enterprise. So, it is a person who brings about or causes to bring about the formation and organization of a corporation by first bringing together the incorporators or the person interested in the enterprise. Second is procuring subscription or capital of the corporation. And last is the setting in motion the machinery which leads to the incorporation of the corporation itself. In short, Promoters are the one who acts on behalf of the corporation before it is formed. Next is the Section 6. So, di na natin basahin kasi mahaba. So, iisa-isahin ko na lang per topic para mas maintindihan. So, Section 6, first paragraph states that classification of shares, the classification of shares, their corresponding rights, privilege, or restrictions, and their stated par value, if any, must be indicated in the articles of incorporation. Each share shall be equal in all respect to every other share, except as the otherwise provided in the article of incorporation and in the certificate of stock. So, sinasabi lang dito na kailangan nakalagay sa articles of incorporation yung mga classification of shares, yung mga corresponding rights, privilege, or mga restrictions, at yung stated par value ng shares. So, in this paragraph, I will discuss two topics which are the doctrine of equality of shares and who may classify shares. So, next. Doctrine of equality of shares. Each share shall be equal in all respect to every other share except as otherwise provided in the articles of incorporation and stated in the certificate of stock. So, sinasabi lang dito na kung walang naka-state sa Articles of Incorporation o hindi naka-provide ang distinction of the shares of the stock, ang lahat ng share na na-issued ng corporation are presumed to be equal and enjoy the same rights and privilege and also subject to the same liabilities. Who may classify shares? So, kung sino yung mga classifying shares, ito yung incorporators and board of directors and stockholders. So, yung incorporators, it is to be determined by the incorporators by stating it in their articles of incorporation, which will be filed with the Security and Exchange Commission. So, yung incorporators, sila yung magka-classify ng shares kasi nga, as stated kanina sa first paragraph, kailangan nakalagay sa Articles of Incorporation yung all information ng classification of shares. So, next is yung Board of Directors and Stockholders. So, the original classification of shares made by incorporators, which was stated in the Articles of Incorporation, can be amended by a majority of the vote of the Board of Directors and the vote or written assent of the stockholders representing at least 2/3 of the outstanding capital stock. So, yung nakasulat sa Articles of Incorporation is pwedeng baguhin ng Board of Directors as long as majority of the board ang nag-vote sa changes ng classifications of shares. So, in terms naman sa stockholders, as long as 2/3 yung vote, pwedeng mabago yung classification of shares. So, next is the second paragraph. So, second paragraph states that the shares in a stock corporation may be divided into classes or series of shares, or both. No share may be deprived of voting rights except those classified and issued as preferred or redeemable shares unless otherwise provided in this code, provided that there shall always be a class or series of shares with complete voting rights. So, sinasabi lang dito na no shares may be deprived of voting rights maliban sa shares na naka-classified as preferred and redeemable. So, yung preferred share, yun yung walang voting rights at makakatanggap ng fixed amount or dividend bago yung mga common stockholder. So, yung redeemable naman, yun yung shares na pwedeng bilhin ulit. So, under this paragraph, I will discuss the following topics. What are voting shares? The right to vote in a stock corporations, the right to vote in a non-stock corporations, and last is what are non-voting shares. So what are voting shares? So voting shares, it is a shares with a right to vote. There shall always be a class or series of shares which have complete voting rights. So in short, ito yung shares na may voting rights as stated in the Articles of Incorporation. So the right to vote in a stock corporation. The right to vote is inherent means permanent yung nakalagay o yung mga nakalagay sa Articles of Incorporation and incidental to the ownership of corporate stocks. Ito yung minor changes na nakalagay sa Articles of Incorporation. It is settled that an issued stock may not be voted or considered in determining whether a quorum is present in a stockholders meeting or whether a requisite proportion of the stock of the corporation is voted to adopt a certain measure or act. So, only stock actually issued and outstanding may be voted. So, lahat ng stock or ng shares na nasa Articles of Incorporation, as long as walang naka naka-indicate doon na hindi sila or non-voting shares sila, is presume na yung shares na yun is voting shares. So lahat ng holder nun is pwedeng bumoto sa stock corporation. So next is the right to vote in non-stock corporation. In non-stock corporation, the voting rights attached to membership. Members vote as person in accordance with the law and bylaws of the corporation. So all members shall be entitled to vote unless so limited, prudent, or denied on the Articles of Incorporation. So lahat ng members ay pwedeng bumoto as long as hindi naka-state sa Articles of Incorporation na bawal silang bumoto. When the principle of determining the quorum for a stock corporation is applied, by analogy to non-stock corporation, only those who are actual members with voting rights should be counted. So, what are non-voting shares? Non-voting shares is shares without a right to vote. The law provides that shares classified and issued as preferred or redeemable shares may be deprived of voting rights. So, yung non-voting shares, ito yung shares na walang voting rights. Example nito, yung preferred shares and redeemable shares. Non-voting rights sila, shares sila kasi naka-state sa law na lahat ng shares na preferred and redeemable is non-voting shares. So, what is a common stock? So, a common stock, a class of stock entitling the holder to vote on a corporate matters, to receive dividends after other claims and dividends have been paid, and to share in assets upon liquidation. So, common stock is often called as capital stock, also termed as ordinary shares. So, yung holder ng common stock, sila yung huling makakatanggap ng dividends kasi kailangan mo nang ma-fulfill yung obligation sa creditors and also yung claims ng mga preferred shareholder bago sila makatanggap ng kanilang dividends. So, however, yung mga common stock, sila yung may complete voting rights. So, sila yung may karapatan na bumoto sa isang corporation. So, what is a preferred stock? A preferred stock, share of stock, on the other hand, is one which entitles the holder thereof to certain preference over holders of a common stock. So, yung preferred stock naman, sila yung holder na after ng ma-fulfill yung obligation sa creditors, sila yung makakatanggap ng una ng fixed amount which is yung dividend. Pero kahit na sila yung unang laging nakakatanggap, wala silang karapatan na bumoto or mag-decide sa isang corporation. So, there are two forms of preferred shares. Una, preferred shares as to assets. Pangalawa is preferred shares as to dividends. So, yung preferred shares as to assets, ito yung preferred shares which gives the holder in the distribution of assets of the corporation in case of liquidation. So, yung preferred shares as to dividends naman, ito yung preferred shares which gives the holder and the distribution of dividends to receive before the holder of a common stock. So, next is what are redeemable shares? So, redeemable shares. So, redeemable shares, it is shares issued by the corporation when expressly so provided in the articles of incorporation. They may be purchased or taken up by the corporation upon the expiration of fixed period, regardless of the existence of restricted retained earnings. So, in short, yung redeemable shares, ito yung shares na pwedeng bilhin ulit ng corporations upon expiration of the fixed period. So next is the instances when holders of non-voting shares are allowed to vote. So holders of non-voting shares shall nevertheless be entitled to vote on the following matters. First is amendment of the Articles of Incorporation. So, as long as nakalagay sa Articles of Incorporation na yung non-voting shares ay pwedeng bumoto, then they are allowed to vote. Halimbawa, kung sinakalagay sa Articles of Incorporation na yung mga preferred shareholder is pwedeng bumoto, then pwede silang bumoto. Adoption and amendment of bylaws. So, the same lang din siya. As long as provided by bylaws, then pwede silang mag-vote. So, yung C, sale, lease, exchange, mortgage, pledge, or other disposition of all or substantially of all corporate property, incurring, creating, or increasing bonded indebtedness, increase or decrease of authorized capital stock, merger or consolidation of the corporation with another corporation or other corporations, investment of corporate funds in another corporation or in business in accordance with this code, and dissolution of the corporation. So, pwede silang bumoto kasi under this six instances is kailangan ng vote ng owner or ng holder ng capital stock ng corporation. So, yung holder ng capital stock of corporation or yung outstanding shares ng corporation is composed of preferred shares and ordinary shares. So kahit non-voting shares sila, holder sila ng non-voting shares, is pwede silang bumoto under these circumstances or instances. So that's all. Thank you.